Hello everybody, welcome to another On the Workbench session. I'm just getting things set up here, getting some stuff out of the way, making the palette camera a little bit smaller, and now it seems that we are live, and I'm gonna get my little chat window working over here. Just give me a second to do that, and as you can see here, what I'm gonna do tonight is I've got the rest of my Army of the Dead that I have to finish off here. I did a big chunk of it during an army painting series a few months ago for the Patreon page. And we've got just a couple of them here. You might recognize this guy right here. He looks an awful lot like the one that you see there in all the images. And the idea is what we're going to do is do some glowing effects. You see we've got some of that ethereal greenish glow. Different colors though. Some of it's a little bit warmer, some of it's a little bit cooler. But then you also have the corrosion, even on the weapons, everywhere else. That was the nifty thing about the movie is it basically a little bit of each, and we even have a little glow on our marble base. Now I'll get you some of the other figures here. This was all, again, this is all part of the Army Painting series. This is really fun. Donated by a really good friend. This is the original metal standard bearer right here. I really loved painting this one. This is all, again, part of that Army Painting series. The bases are made of Sculpey, and I take you through that whole process. I really enjoyed this guy here. And one of the reasons the bases were important for these guys, you can see look how he's leaning forward. And that is quite the forward lean. And see the angle that base is on? Now that's just basic cork right there, but see it's got a little bit of an angle shifted upwards there. That's really important because again he's leaning forward so far. There's another one doing the same thing that they're kind of almost like they're face down. It's like they're all falling down or something. So I just wanted to change that angle, and that's why we've got some here. And you see some of them actually have some marble painted on there. These are some new skulls that I added, I think on a couple of the bases. Yeah, here's another one right here. We added it on here. Those are from Green Stuff World. And let me see if I can, here we go. They have a whole bunch of really nifty things like this. That's really handy, especially since, as you're watching the movie, those skulls just all kind of tumble down when they went into the City of the Dead. So what I think I'm going to do is just throw some glue on this real quick here while we get set up. You can see the colors on the palette there too. We've got some fluorescent paint out there. So again, this is just a basic pin right here. Nothing fancy piece, just paper clip. You can see how that angle now gets him a little more upright instead of just leaning forward. A couple leaning forward is okay. Now here's another one. Again, even with that angled base, look at how much forward he's leaning. So to me, I think that was really important. That was a big deal to get that working right. We've got our fluorescent paint here. You could use Vallejo for this. Green Stuff World has a fluorescent paint. For right now, I'm just using the scale 75. We also have some contrast paints out here. Got this Achillean green. That's also, I think it's the Warp Lightning green. Yep, that's your Warp Lightning. I put them in these little watercolor cups like this because, well, at $8 a jar, spilling your contrast paint is an expensive boo-boo. We don't want that. And these are dirt cheap on Amazon. You get dozens of them for just a few bucks. So, well worth it. And it makes it a little more convenient right here. We got actually a secret weapon right here. Verdigris pale green. You're going to see more secret weapon weathering colors later on. This is something here from, this is from Monument, Slow Fuse, Creature Caster. That's where you can get them on the Creature Caster website. This is not so much to make the fluorescent effect. The Monument colors, this is kind of their hey, and there's Trevor. How's it going? Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm painting these. is to finish off these guys before, because I ordered those new Army of the Dead, the King and his 2 standard bears, so we'll be painting those for sure on a live session. This stuff is more opaque, I'm sorry, than the average paint. This is super translucent. Now see how thick that is? Maybe really thick, but look at how translucent that is. Now we're going to do a little brush stroke here. Look at that. So that is what this is for. It's to basically not only make this a little warmer, but see, look at that. Now it's more opaque. These are sometimes the strategies you have to think of when you're doing your painting. We got the usual liner paints out here, blue and brown liner and such. I'm really looking forward to those guys. Oh man, I can't wait to see them. They got to be plastic. I would definitely imagine that they are, but I can't wait for those guys, especially to team those up with the old classic metal standard bear here. This is another thing with the Sculpey bases. So he's obviously heavy and top heavy for sure with the banner. This is a big old chunk of Sculpey here. See how that extends over? That's the whole idea. That is to act as a counterweight to all the weight that's up here, but yet you can still get into base to base because these were done with playing the game in mind. Because Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite games, and I have every intention of continuing to play that. Now let's look at what we got here. We've got 3 of these guys in different stages. Let's put them in order here. So this guy over here, you can see he's basically just primer. Sort of a semi-zenithal. People are always talking about the zenithal priming. This has some initial layers of glazing on it, as you can see, done with the liner paints. And then we have our finished one here. That's why I wanted to basically augment the army painting one with something like this, where people see, they usually don't see individual figures like this that I'm picking up halfway through. They see a 5-part series, and I'll show you. This is, there we go. So that is the new army that is born again, and you can see all the paints that we were using. Now that's the Vallejo. See it over there? You can also see some of the secret weapon paints that we're going to be using. And here's our original one here that we're going to be working from. So you can see there's corrosion, there's glow. Look at how around the eyes, you can't see the cursor that I'm pointing there, but around his head, the glow is more, it's more bright, it's more yellow. And then as you get down towards see how that's much grayed down, much more subdued? That's what we're looking to do here, is have this be much more subdued in every area that's not the center of interest. So I'm going to take this first one here. So we got ourselves some brown liner here, and I'm just going to hit the base. I'm just going to basically paint over the old original base here so you can see what that process is like, and we'll just sort of unify this whole thing. I'm going to grab a little bit of blue liner in there. There's also a green liner paint that is really nifty for these opening stages like this. We've also got ourselves our makeup sponge that lets us pull some of this away, as you do. Now we're going to get into some little touch of our blue liner, but let's throw in some other stuff. So this is Wildwood. That's your contrast paint right there. We're going to get a little bit of our Warp Lightning Green. This is something that I don't really see people unfortunately doing with the contrast paints, is using multiple colors like this, especially on fantasy style figures, because, why not? So this is a very different approach than what I did on the army painting video. Why is that? Well, these weren't out when I did that months ago. See a little more of the green. I'm just going to jam that down into there. So now it has more of a greenish look. We got Snakebite leather over here. Look at that. I'm just going to let those mix together because That's sort of what we want with our Army of the Dead. Here, do we even... I'm going to grab a little bit of this, the Fire Slayer flesh, and so we're going to put that on his weapon, on the skull. Where is that? Here's some more. Now it's really, really dark. Now this is all, again, your contrast paints here. We'll work from there. Now I could go in with my makeup sponge and take some of this away, but I'm going to leave this just be as it is so you can see the difference between a starting point of, say, this versus this. This is another thing sorry, that I wanted to show people, and that is, sorry about that, it's been a long day of talking and recording videos. So craft brush right here, I want to show you these because, well, that's what we do. Bang, right there, Hobby Lobby special. Hey Bethany, how's it going? Well, this will be going for a while, so I think you'll be, well, at least heading out to lunch at a certain point. No, that's if I do the early one. Sorry about that. So I'm going to grab this here, and I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm just basically taking some water here. I don't have the contrast medium, but I want to see what happens when we do a little bit of, just a bit of a glazing type of thing here. This is the Snakebite leather. Yeah, see how we're making that a little bit lighter now? And I wanted you to see these two side by side, because I've been asked if I use basically the contrast paints more like this, more like a glaze. I could. We're sort of doing that right now. And say I'm going to remove some of that now. There's so many other basically glazing materials that I already have. It's kind of reinventing the wheel, basically. And you use what you can get, because the best ability is availability. And, well, sometimes the contrast paints can be hard to come by. The secret weapon stuff, my Reaper Miniatures paint, the Pro Acryl, I have not had issues acquiring that stuff. So if it's easier for you to get the GW paints, this is why we're playing around with the contrast here. So I just took, it's mostly just water in the brush now. So see what's going to happen here. We're just doing a much lighter version of this. Let's get even lighter here. If I had contrast medium, yeah, I suppose I could use that, but I don't. So we're going to use this. Now I'm going to get some Snakebite leather and wildwood mixed together here and go into that little shadow area there. So you can see we're augmenting in a different way the shading that was there, because you've got sort of this method right here where we remove the stuff. This is basically just the straight up contrast paint. See, much darker than this. This still gets some of the tinting. You got the green there and such. But once again, if you can get the contrast paint, if you can get the contrast medium and wildwood, many of the places I would try to get wildwood, they just don't have it. Fortunately, again, some more friends who live in places where it's a whole bunch easier to get, they sent me some, and that is much appreciated. Now here's going to be that Fire Slayer flesh once again. Now over that, you're going to have your fluorescent paints and the brighter stuff. Here we're going to do some green here. That's the pretty much straight up contrast green, but then we're going over to some Snakebite leather here. Now we're going to do a little bit of gentle removing here. Just do that with a brush. So this is what I love about these, because see how I can expand that out a little bit and then poof, take some of it away. Gonna do the same thing here. So take some of it away. It's a little bit gentler than maybe makeup sponges. Let's get this a little bit further here over the rest of this cloak. So it's a lot of water in that. An awful lot of water. We go into our snakebite leather now. Look at that. We're going to grab some more of this green. I'm just going to let all those mix together real nice. And notice we worked from the top and we worked down. Dragged everything down here. We're trying to make gravity our friend and not a mortal enemy. It's always important to do when you want to have the more the watery type of treatment, like this. You have to factor that in. Now we're going to go back to our wildwood here. Just gonna hit this Sculpey. Now the Sculpey that I use here, for the folks familiar with my basing tutorials with the Green Stuff World texture rollers, so just take a little blue liner, let that mix in with the wildwood. That stuff it's okay for this sort of function, having these big old blocks, but this is a case where the regular, much cheaper, white Super Sculpey, or just regular Sculpey, not Super Sculpey, is the way to go. What that's going to let you do is break it into all these really nifty shapes. It's easy to carve, paints really well. So this was the original Sculpey that I found years ago, and I've really just loved it ever since. Now look what happens here. See, when we take some of that away, we already have some irregularities there in our colors. Look at that. We can take it away from the sides here. Gives us some nifty shading already, and we'll augment that obviously with some glow from this guy. Now let's compare these two. So you can see we have really enhanced our shading. Again, this not an option when I did that first series where you saw the other figures. We're just gonna let this guy dry. Let's do him the same way. Now this time I might just preserve that base. So again, I'm gonna take some of the wildwood and blue liner. We're gonna let those mix together. But what we are gonna do is establish ourselves some darks over here. We are going to take some snakebite leather and toss that onto our skulls there, because that's what you do with skulls, apparently. And I think, oh gosh, I must have done 12 or so of the Army of the Dead in that initial tutorial, but it takes more than that to make an army. So that is why I'm trying to fill out the rest of it. That's why now I have the King of the Dead. And I don't think I got the new Lord of the Rings cards with that. Maybe I should have gotten those. But I've got to get the Gondor at War supplement anyways, and all of that info is in there. Alright, so you can see now our marble really shows up well, that we've done some darker treatment here around it. Let's get to this guy here. We're going to grab some more of the green. Let's start with the cloak back here. And once again, for folks that are just joining in, this is a little experiment here. The idea is to use the contrast paints more as a glaze as opposed to that initial just big splotchy wash thing that everybody throws over the entire thing. Here you can see we're varying the color. We're pulling some of it away to make it lighter or darker in places. And as I was just saying too, well, there's so many other things. Green Stuff World Intensity inks, the transparent paints from Pro Acryl, Monument. There's just so many options that whatever is best for you, whatever you're most comfortable with. But if you already have contrast paints, it's just a different idea. See, we're starting to remove some of it here. Look at that. I'm just cleaning off the brush, and while it's still wet, taking some of it away. I can even use my finger in some places. Let's go to the other side. Hi, Cameron. How's it going? How many units in Army of the Dead? Well, there's mounted versions. I have an old metal one. I really hope that maybe someday there might be plastic Army of the Dead cavalry. But right now, they're just kind of Army of the Dead. That new box set, that's the first, what would you say, specialized Army of the Dead there's ever been, outside of the King of the Dead. There was basically King of the Dead and then a bunch of dead guys. That was pretty much it. But now he has, I think they're called heralds, maybe? I can't believe I've already forgotten. Well, I remember when they get here. So there's that snakebite leather up into the armor. Now we're going to shift away from that. We actually got some of the Achillean green. We got some of the wildwood here. That's going to, see that now I got a little bit more of a bluish touch to that. Again, this is all just contrast paints. We're changing colors, shifting things around. Just having ourselves a ball. Now I just got some, that's just water. We are now thinning down. I think we can take some of it away, and I'm just going to take what's left of that, sweep that down here, and see it's just naturally lighter. Look at this. We're just taking some water, and we just extended our little contrast paint thing over this. So look at all that shading that was just created. And that was not relying on just one blob of contrast paints. That was, we had some control here. Look at this. We got almost a kind of a reddish look here, and this almost looks blue on the other side. Here, I'm going to lighten this up now. There we go. Now I got to bring my chat back. Gonna go back to some green here. This is that's actually blue liner right here. You're sensing a theme. Now look at this. See, it's a little bit darker than the sleeve. There's so many different ways to approach this. Don't just limit yourself to, it's got to be this way. It has to be this way. This is going to be the Fire Slayer flash. That's in place. On the back side, just throw wildwood over there. Remember, I've got my sponges here. Just take some of that away. There's different types of makeup sponges too. Then we got stuff like this right here. That can get you down into some more specific areas. Let's play with something here. I'm going to take, this is just contrast green. And I'm just going to drop that into the still wet contrast paint. Let it mix together a little bit. I don't know. To me, it's more fun this way too. So I just took, again, some more water. Here's that Achillean green and our wildwood. Let's get ourselves some shadows in the face there. Let's get this helmet. I think we are all straight around the helmet there. Let's take some paint away. This is again just going to be a filbert, our homemade filbert brush here. As we take some of this away, I can use my finger. You can see that helmet has a little different tone to it now. Could use a makeup sponge if we want. Let's do our sword now. Let's get some more of our green. And we just go back and forth. Now we're back into some of the Fire Slayer Flash. And this is a little bit of a Kilian green. See, we're just going to push that right out to the end of that. Take our makeup sponge, take some away. And we're already starting to get some quick non-metallic metal, but with some rust there. So what I'm going to do is leave this guy like this so you can basically get an idea of what things looked like before and what they look like now. I am going to take some of this Snakebite leather and hit these skulls again, make sure that everything is, especially down in the eyes there, is all covered. So you can see the contrast paint, it's still drying. But let's get started with some of our lighting effects. So this again is you can see I've got still some contrast paints in there. And we're already starting to drop just a bit of our glow. Something to keep in mind, and now I think you can really see just how translucent. Look at that. Just how translucent that stuff is. That is why we have to use the other colors to give it a boost in opacity. And we'll do that here with some of the secret weapon. Pale green, verdigris. And I think you'll see how we get a little more coverage there now. Bit more coverage. And if I wanted to cover even more, then that's when I can add the Pro Acryl. But that's also going to warm it up, so I'd have to grab a different Pro Acryl. And I have a few. I might throw the Faded Ultramarine out there, the legendary Faded Ultramarine. But now we're going to take some of the, again, this is that from Creature Caster. So this is going to now be a bit more, let's get a little bit on his face, and that's going to cover a little bit more. It's also going to be a different color. It's going to be warmer. Now you don't have to use the same giant brushes that I do. Well, to me, they aren't necessarily giant. But to some folks, they are freaking huge. See, look at how that starts to cover more. But at the same time, it does make it much more towards the yellow. And as I just do this, you can see it's starting to take on a bit of a little bit more of that greenish ethereal look. You can use some of the, well, basically non-fluorescent paint colors to do this, and it'll look bright green. No, sorry, you got caught. Well, you know, you can watch this anytime. That's why I do these. It's fun when, well, Trevor, Bethany, and Cameron and everybody can join. First, last will probably be with us maybe later on. Actually, if you want to be assured of always knowing about these, I guess, so you subscribe, obviously, step one, but I didn't really realize this till, you know, the folks that I subscribe to, I found out I have to click the all notifications, and that's when I find out, okay, yeah, they're doing a live thing, or they did some kind of special episode or whatever. So that is definitely something you want to do. You can see we're starting to expand the glow now down onto the skulls and onto the marble. Here, let's tone that down a bit, and then we'll just use that same green over here. Again, it's very translucent, and that is what we want, because I want the dingy stuff underneath to show through. I'm not looking to cover that. We want that to stick around. Now, here is from Reaper Miniatures. That is mint green. We're going to add that. That's going to change. So now we've got ourselves going to be brighter. It covers more, but now it has a cooler color to it, and that's, I think, especially good for a blade. So yeah, we just added that one color on there. That's all it took. Remember, we can mix with the contrast paints to these lighter colors. So now, before where we had the cooler tones, now we've got, or later the warmer stuff, now we got some cooler tones that are working their way in. I also have to remember that we're going to throw our rust and other corrosion and such over this. Pretty much, I guess all miniatures are like chess matches, but when you want to do any kind of weathering, I always say it is like a chess match. You've got to figure out moves ahead. All right, if there's going to be the lighter colored rust down in here, I can't have this has to stay dark, but this also needs to be cooler. And by cooler, I mean we're using, again, some of that secret weapon, the pale verdigris green. Now let's get some of the armor bits here. I don't have to worry about perfection there, because remember, down into the crevices will be our corrosion effects. And the way the secret weapon paints work is it's like a glaze / wash. So we're going to grab a little different brush here, and we're going to go back to our warmer. And it starts to get a little bit lighter. And not everything needs to be green. I think this is also the biggest difference from the GW represent. Hey, Gary, how's it going? Oh, you haven't missed much. We've only been doing this for 25 minutes-ish. Is there, it doesn't say how, oh, it's about 12:30 here. But we haven't been doing it too long, so you're as close to the beginning as you could be. Now, oh, and yeah, I saw the mithril miniatures there. That is actually, speaking of which, that's another thing that I was originally going to have it as a patron video thing, but I will probably tackle that on YouTube live sessions. Possibly even while I'm painting other Lord of the Rings figures. So see what we just did there? We put that over the top of our cooler, our bluish flit. Now look, we haven't done anything that's light yet. So I'm adding a touch of basically ivory here. We're going to go back to get some of our fluorescent paint in there. And you'll see the difference. You can see how far it is we have to go towards light. We have not begun to lighten this yet. I am going to get this down into the eyes here, because those certainly need to be lighter. Now the reason why I didn't focus too much on making the hair and such darker. So as this glow starts to take shape, we don't want to go too far too fast. We're going to go the other way now. We're going to take some of this white and some of the mint green, and hopefully have a little bit of a lighter color that's also cooler. Let's do that here on his scabbard. And then just in a second here, we'll take a look at what we had right here. So, because that's again, that's just your contrast paints there that we used as a little bit of a preliminary wash. But you can see how he starts to develop now. It's like he's being sculpted. He's being pulled out of. Yeah, here's some more of his armor pieces here. And these I always try to leave myself enough room to be able to lighten things some more. Don't want to go to the super highlight super fast. You can see that we also work on the whole miniature at once. We're not working on just a little tiny part of it, working on the whole thing. Because if you just work on one part, like if we didn't have the glow in the eyes, we might be tempted to just keep highlighting the heck out of the face and the hair and everything else. And then, well, you don't have any glow in the eyes because everything else is just too darn light. And when you're doing armies, you don't want to be blowing away precious time having to repaint things or tone stuff down too much. So we're going to do a little something different here. That's the contrast green mixed with our fluorescent. We'll see what this does. That should be fun. Let's get his robe here. So it's going to be certainly transparent because, well, contrast paints are transparent. But it's even a brighter green by virtue of just sort of infusing it with the fluorescent green. But keeps this dark because that's what I wanted here. We didn't want this to be too light. But in some places I may not actually mind where something down in the crevices is actually a lighter green. So see, even at this point we're still kind of shading and tinting things. That's your contrast paint at work, believe it or not, in there. So see how that changes the flavor of the green? It's a different kind of green now. But in here, the reason this is all left dark is because I want my corrosion and such to go down in there. Now the thing is though, with the fluorescent and contrast paint mix, you can only go so light with that. You're going to have to start adding some of the other more opaque colors if you want that to be brighter. You can see, look at how that just changes that to a whole different shade of green. Let's go back. I'm just going to go into the eyes here and try and get the brightest of the bright. Just going to hold him on his side here. There we go. Bang. Now he's got some glow. This is, again, the whole thing of context, because I can go brighter than this still. That is not the brightest that I can go. I don't really want to go any brighter than that. But it's there. It's there now. That's basically the color that I used for the eyes, but now starting to spread that around. And you can see how this starts to cover more and more because we've got that super opaque paint that's in there. It makes your fluorescent paint cover so well. See, look at this. It's really going to cover that well. Might even infuse a little bit of the contrast paint in there. Almost acts like a little bit of flow improver. Here, let's step up a little bit of glow on our skulls and such here. And down here, some suggestions of lighter tones. But as always, thinking ahead, thinking about the rusty tones and dirty tones that are going to go in there. As you can see, I got myself a whole nice array of greens to work from here. Look at how much lighter we can go. And to me, this is so much more interesting than just the typical Games Workshop version of these. I sort of feel like it's just being a really nifty miniature just being wasted when all they do is just take whatever green and just sort of wash it over some kind of off-white, and that's about the extent of it. There is zero corrosion effects or anything like that done on the figures, and it just sort of feels like a wasted opportunity a bit. Now let's go back to that cooler version. We're going to make it lighter though. See that? So now we've got a whole different version of this green. It's not just cooler or lighter, but it can also be more saturated, less saturated. And the brushes that I've got here, it's an experiment I've been conducting. We used to use a lot of these blue handle Cotmans back in the day. It's a Winsor Newton brush, and we always liked them. I know Kathy likes them a lot. She's going to be using these a whole bunch on her stream. We just got a bunch. I got some more on the way. You'll see me using, it's actually the first quadruple zero that I've ever had. Let's maybe start to highlight the armor a little more. But I also have to be aware. Okay, let's go to our yellowish version here. If we want this to be lighter, grabbing it against some of the fluorescent there. Let's see if we can't find a few lighter spots on the head. We got a big old hole in his skull, it would seem. That must have hurt. But you notice this part here is still almost leaving that like a brownish color. That is definitely in his hand, even. This is the thing I wish they would have done. Again, the GW paint jobs is leave a little bit of the original part of this intact instead of it having just all ethereal. That was the nifty for me in the movie. I just liked the way that, yeah, they were glowing and transparent and everything, but the armor still had corrosion on it. Like it was semi-corporeal. There was a touch of physical realism to it. See if we can get these a little lighter. We can certainly get a few more light colors here on the back of the robe. Like so. All the while shifting our color between this warmer stuff here and then the cooler stuff here. I'm going to actually go cooler here with some lighter tones on the robe. Getting a few highlights on the armor. Just a few here. And let's see what we want to do on the shield here. We'll certainly have a lot of rust effects going on with that. Pick up a couple of the rivets here. Maybe some of that metal trim in places. And here that's already, we have sort of a decent little bit of a rust effect that's going there, so maybe I'll just leave some of that behind. Just sort of scumbling the brush over the top. It's not a dry brush, there's plenty of paint in there. But because we're using this little bit of a gentle brush stroke, so see now we got ourselves a little bit of a metal look to the shield. Hitting the rest of the scabbard, so let's just start to leave this as we have it for the time being, because we want to do another one of these guys. Which one are we going to do? This one maybe. So you can see the difference here. Big difference between the two. Let's set that one aside. Now let's do a similar exercise on this one. Just as we did before, we're going to get into our... See how that is translucent enough to let what's underneath show through? And you could do tons of layers of paint or whatever, opaque stuff, or a whole bunch of glazes, one on top of the other, or you do the little bit of zenithal priming there. You take advantage of it with contrast paints. You augment it basically. And now we're taking this paint that is on the translucent side, and we're taking advantage of its translucency. But you can see it's drier than a contrast paint. It's not all liquid and water and everything going all over the place. Fairly easy to control. Now we're going to... I just added a little bit of the Pro Acryl yellowish green. And this is a dual purpose thing. Yes, we're adding some lights here, but it's also making that a warmer green because that's what we want on this side. The other side we'll just do a cooler green. So we're going to infuse some of the armor with this. But that's what's fun and also a little harrowing about using something like the fluorescent paints, because they are so translucent. People are used to stuff that covers. That's the first question I'm always asked is, how do they cover? Do they cover everything? Well, yeah, also, in the case of, okay, these Pro Acryls here, yeah, they cover. They cover fantastic. But why does that have to be all the time? Why not maybe have something that intentionally doesn't cover quite so well? See, now we're putting some of our lighter tone in there, but also has a little bit of the yellow in there. Let's go the other way. Let's go more towards the cool side of things. There. So yes, it's lighter, but it also is a little bit on the cooler side. See, we can start to pick up some of the chainmail. I'm going to leave some of it just its original sort of dark coloration. Here's some, gonna go back to that. I want to make sure I keep some of the fluorescent in there. Oh, it is so different from the mid, yeah. Thanks, Cameron. I always call it the subversive painter. The subversive painting techniques, the outlaw painting techniques. It's breaking all the rules. Didn't realize there were so many rules to miniature painting. Wait, well, you have to do this. Yeah, it's... I guess now there's a bit of an advantage in that my training was as a watercolor, pastel / oil painter. Been using oils since I was 11, I think, and then had years of watercolors and pastels in art school. So I guess that's all. That stuff is just still in my brain, and it starts to play out on the miniatures. And I guess there's a third aspect to that, because I was also trained as a commercial artist to do illustrations, and well, you had to do them fast. You needed to make your illustration look like it was a classical, medieval, oil painting or a Renaissance era oil painting, but in a fraction of the time. You didn't have the luxury of just endless hours of plying away. No, it just had to happen. There was no screwing around. I love doing my wet blending. Now, speaking of which, oil painting, I have several army painting series that I've done with the oil paints, and one of those is the Morgul Knights. That's Lord of the Rings, for those not familiar with it. That's those really fantastic sort of dark warriors riding on the cavalry, and that was, I think it was series, maybe series 6 or something like that. Yeah, I think it might have been series 6. That was all done in oils, and boy, did I have a blast with that. I love to paint miniatures in oils. Oh my gosh. I do it all the time if I could. Yeah, the one thing I still don't think they make is true fluorescent oil paints, though. That's kind of a bummer. Now, I need to get back into my warm stuff here, so let me just do that real briefly here. Because when we first started painting miniatures, we did what we were quote unquote told to do. You prime it black, 10 bazillion layers of progressively lighter colors, you maybe have a miniature. Well, that was okay, but it took a long time, and it just didn't feel like there was a lot of depth in the shadows, and that's important. Like here in the shadows are basically kind of a dirty brown in there. Here we're trying to make that a little bit. Here, let's get some more intense yellow into this here. So it's not just a highlight, it's also changing the temperature of the color. And actually through the magic of XSplit, let's do something here like zoom. So you can see there's plenty of value there. You can see all the lights and darks, plenty of shape, but what you do not see as we bring this back in is all of the balance between warm and cool. And speaking of the cooler colors, let's do that over on this side. So we're taking, once again, we're going to get some of that fluorescent paint back in here. Let's do this side a bit cooler. Oh, my chat's covered up now by the controls. And feel free to ask questions. I know if you're at work like Bethany was, you have to do it in a stealthy way. So here we got some, again, it's a bit bluer on this side. Here, let's make sure we get some of our sword there, maybe even a touch of his hand, a little bit of the helmet. But you notice I'm leaving that more of the rusty color. Speaking of which, let's get ourselves a little more of a something on our floor here. And there's actually still a little bit of our original wash down in there. So here, this is another little thing. We're just kind of scumbling away with this. Still have some of the original, the contrast paint that we used. So we're just letting those sort of mix together. So this is we're back into some of our wet blending again. There, let's get a little bit of it's just a greenish tone. We don't want it to look like he's casting a whole bunch of light on the base, but just, I don't know, is this some kind of ethereal glow here? Again, that's a little touch of wet blending there. Now, this is scumbling some more. but there's more of the contrast paint. There's more of the fluorescent green in there. It keeps that from getting too bright. Speaking of bright, let's see if we can add a little more of a light to these cooler areas here, and then I'll show you. I'll do that little thing again after we generate some lighter tones in here. But I think, yeah, I just looked at the screen. You can definitely see that there's a cooler color involved. See, even this, what is this, a 1? Yeah, this can be spread out. It's almost like a miniature filbert brush. And a lot of people, when they see this, they think it's dry brushing. It most definitely is not, because look at that. There's plenty of paint on that brush. It is not dry brushing by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a difference in the brush stroke. I suppose now that's where calligraphy comes in handy, because I've also been called a closet calligrapher. I really love calligraphy, and different brushstrokes are really critical for calligraphy. We're just going to, on his helmet here, I'm going to get one step lighter. Give me one more step lighter here on these lights up towards the top. And then we'll do the thing where we kill the saturation again. Like you do. Yeah, I'm going to go here. So I'll even use my finger, because, hey, finger painting is very fun. Alright, we got him here. We are going to go zoom with the intensity. All of our shading is in place. So we clearly have enough lights and darks. But now we're going to bring it all back. And now we have that difference between warm and cool, which is cool. I like it. So here we're doing a similar thing. We're just bringing in a cooler version of the color. We'll throw a little bit on the scabbard here. See, even his hand, we're not going to go too crazy with the fluorescent paint on his hand. Let's go here with some green on the sword. Now we have two of these that are reasonably similar, so you can see how we've progressed. This again is at the contrast glazes that we did, and now this is where we started to add in our lighter colors and the fluorescent paint. And if let's see, scrolling across the bottom of the screen is going to be the Patreon little chat about that, where it talks about the army painting level. That is for, at this point, when you subscribe at the army painter level, that's the $15 pledge. It's well over 200 hours worth of videos. I send those links to you so you can watch them. That was, I think, early September. It officially crossed the 200-hour plateau, and well, yeah, we're just further smashing that plateau. It's just being annihilated, because I think I've added probably another 30 hours of videos since then. Now there's other live sessions too. I recommend you check those out. And like I said, if you do the subscribe thing, also click on that all notifications, and then when I do something like this, you'll get a heads up. I wish I could do these at a pre-prescribed time or date. I'd love to do that, but I have to time things with the Patreon videos, but also sometimes the internet doesn't want to cooperate. Fortunately, last night I didn't have any plans to do one of these because right around this time, for several hours, there was no internet here. I don't know, maybe Comcast was doing something and the lines were just down. I don't know. So that's why I don't try to say, okay, we're always going to do it Tuesday nights at this time every Tuesday. Conventions, we're going to be at Dragonfall in just a matter of weeks. Actually, I'm doing some basing classes there. That I think it's in Elmhurst here in Chicago. That is I think it's the next to last weekend in October. So not Halloween weekend, but the weekend before that. You can sign up for some basing classes, and I'll certainly have Sculpey bases like this there. We'll be working with tree bark. I've just ordered some more wood carving tools so that everybody in the class will have them. Now I'm gonna get that. Where is that? Quad 0. Here it is. Let's get this out here. Let's see what kind of fun we can have with it. So first thing I'm gonna do is enhance the eyes here a bit. There, get those really bright. We're also gonna throw a few little lights on our sword hilt here, but there's that snakebite leather. This is good. This is the other thing I wanted to show you. So what I just did there was I took snakebite leather, that was the contrast paint, and I just took my sort of semi-fluorescent yellow mix in there. Here, let's do that on this side of the sword handle. Let's get a little more of our off-white in there, make it a little lighter. Let's go a little lighter. So this is the other thing. I've got a few other contrast paint videos, and that's one of the things that I do. There's one, I'll probably link it to this, where I'm doing the sky earth non-metallic metal, but with contrast paints, where we take regular paint and contrast paint and mix it together. Now I'm going to take, there's the Fire Slayer flesh, and we're going to mix that with our lighter color. Let's get some colors other than just the fluorescent green in here. Say on his beard, maybe even on the skull here, maybe even on some parts of his helmet, maybe here on the sword blade. We've got these leather straps. Maybe we won't make those green. Let's maybe make it more of a leather strap and a color that is not fluorescent green. We can do that. Yes, we can. I can even put a color in there that's not fluorescent at all, and it's a lighter color. Again, we're shattering all the rules, whatever rules those are. We'll go a touch lighter here. And I can always go back with the contrast paint to take advantage of that and do a little glaze over the top of that. So see, now we have some glow in his eyes. We have something that maybe looks a little bit more like skin tone, or some kind of decayed skin tone, instead of just the glowing green. And there's nothing wrong with glowing green, that's fine. But it doesn't have to be absolutely everywhere. And we can find ourselves some more highlights here in our armor on his chest, which I just am going to assume is metal. Let's get a little lighter over here on this side of the helmet. I'm intentionally breaking up the brush strokes there. I was hoping, and it seems to definitely be the case, that would give me... let's get some of this fluorescent in here. Yeah, that's going to be too light. I'm going to actually go back to some of the... That's the Creature Caster Monument. More of a yellow-green there. There. Just having some fun. To me, this is really fun and relaxing. I could just... Well, don't necessarily have a choice. This is what I do every day, all day. It's a 7-day a week, 365. Typical day of painting for me starts at 10 hours and goes up from there. I try to record as many things for you guys as possible. Oh, my chat got covered up again by controls. Oh, hey Cameron, James the Wizard. Remember Uncle Adam at Tabletop Minions? Another kind of way we make gold mini with the toothpick. Yeah, what was it? Gosh, this was several ReaperCons ago. Obviously, the Bob Ross of miniature painting was tossed around a lot, but at ReaperCon years ago, I think this is with the tree bark, and I used the orange juice container lid as a plinth, or like, what was that, one of those Sunny Delights or something like that. It was a big old thing, and it made a fantastic plinth. And that's when I got the MacGyver of miniature painting tag. I think now that I've also gotten the Chuck Norris of miniature painting, because I think one of my favorite quotes was something like, I just stare at unpainted miniatures and they just paint themselves in fear. And that's how everybody else should be. You should also be your own Chuck Norris. Channel your own inner Chuck Norris. Ooh, that's t-shirt worthy. Usually the t-shirt expressions, those come up on the recorded videos, but watching on mute from work. Wargaming Live. Thanks a bunch for joining in. Yeah, it's too bad that they don't make USB earbud speaker thing, so you could just kind of have that thing in your ear going all, secret agent style or something like that. You just have that kind of me talking in your ear, telling you to paint stuff. That would be kind of an interesting, crazy FBI thing, or a painting contest, or someone's in a different part of the hotel and they actually have to somehow give instructions to painters. They can't see what they're doing. They can only talk to them through a headset. And they can't actually see what the painters are doing. That would be, well, yeah. That's what happens when it's this late at night, and it's only going to get crazier as time goes on. So yeah, I did enjoy the Chuck Norris stuff there. That was very fun. Now I'm going to go back to some lighter, cooler colors. Once again, on the sword blade, I need something on this side. But I don't want to lose too much of the dark there. But we're just going to take some of that now. Let's get into, this is our little contrast paint slurry there. Because, hey, palette sludge, that's a great color. And we're going to do a little bit of wet blending there. Look at that. Basically a one-stroke, non-metallic metal, poof. Doesn't have to be a bazillion layers of glazing. And it's not a bad thing to do that. I'm not trying to say, oh, don't do layers of glazing. I'm just saying that maybe there's a faster way. And let's say I wanted to have these Army of the Dead for Golden Demons that are going to be at Adepticon. That, oh yes, there's going to be a bunch of entries from me there. I'll just take these guys here and I'll just refine. How do you refine these things? You just take them and you just keep working on them. You add some more here and there. That's all you got to do. And that's what I'll be doing with these guys. If this is going to be the, well, actually no, there is no unit category for Lord of the Rings, which is a bummer. But who knows? Maybe the king or his heralds or one of those ends up being my entry for Lord of the Rings. I know that's, when's the last time we were able to compete in Golden Demons was, I'm saying 2011, 2010 maybe, one of those years. So we're looking forward to that again. I've got Warcry figures too. Oh gosh, what are they? We have the starter set stuff. Kathy and I are both, well, Kathy's already been painting hers. What am I talking about? She's been, I think her last couple of streams, she painted that. She's going to be painting it again tomorrow. But I've got the other faction from the starter set plus those beasts that can come in randomly. I'm going to be doing some of those. But I'm also going to be doing an army painting series on the Cypher Lords. And I got those all prepped. I'm actually tomorrow probably going to film the first basing video for them. See how we're adding this cooler tone in here. Painting gummy bears crazy. Ooh. Yeah, maybe that's Kathy and I'll have to do a joint stream where we both paint gummy bears. That could be interesting. Yeah, that so far Games Workshop has not seen fit to add a gummy bear category to the Golden Demons yet. I know Kathy will try to change that if she could. But I think we may just have to have a Wappleville gummy bear paint night or something like that. Now I'm going to start to bring in some lighter colors on some of the armor here. Because you can see how we've developed these. There. Get it a little bit closer for you. I want to go one step lighter with the interior glow on the eyes. I'm going to see if I can do that here. Okay, that did it. I'm going to put the ever so sorry, glint of something here, but very patchy. See how that's just, it's not a continuous line. Definitely wanted to do that to represent, well, this is kind of old and corroded, as in very old and very corroded. And that would take me a little drink of water here, 1 second. Sorry about that. Now I'm going to just bring back the bigger brush here real quick. Just to add a little bit more of a light to my marble here. See, we're doing our little scumbling routine there. And I can always, like I said, I can always then glaze over the top of that, knock it down if need be. But I don't mind if there's a little irregularities in that. Now, I'm going to take some of my contrast green here. Let's see if we can tone down some of the stuff around the eyes. That's it. There we go. Let's do a little more. And the idea is I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit here. Let's see if I still got my palette in the right spot. like this. Here, gonna take some of that wildwood there, some of the Archelian green. Let's add some darks. We've been adding plenty of light here. We're actually gonna go back the other way now. And it's not black lining because, well, black lining would be you're just taking one color and that's it. So now we're gonna just reinforce some of our shapes here. We can even glaze this into here. I'm gonna take some wildwood here. See, glaze some darks into this. So see how that starts to change. We're gonna take some of our Achelian green and we'll do a bit of a glaze in here. Do a bit of a glaze here too. So remember we did that initial glaze? It's very similar to what we did to get these starter effects. But now we're working off of stuff that's a few steps in. Now I'm gonna grab some, and that's the Achelian green. If I was using the Reaper paints, it would probably be blue liner and green liner combined. Here, we can even darken this. I'm going to go with the wildwood again. There we are. Let's go to the underside here. And the sword blade. I can see some parts of the armor here too need a little bit of darkening. We have a lot of mid-tones. Plenty of mid-tones, and we're starting to work in plenty of lights as well, but we still have to have those nice rich darks. But you notice I said nice rich darks, not just dark, not black. We certainly want to have some color to this. There. Once again, you can see the difference in what we've added. I'll continue here to throw a little bit of, see, darken down some of the glow around the eyes. Tone down some of these other areas too, like right here. Now let's get some, there's basically a hole in the robe there. Now he's got a hole there. Oh, how far you had the black and white miniature painting guide for the Heritage Lord of the Rings figures based on the older films. Yeah, I wonder. Oh gosh, who is it that did all of the? He did a whole art book for Lord of the Rings back in the day. Actually, I've got to find the Art of Lord of the Rings book because it has some of the original sketches. I remember for the extras for the films. We obviously, well, I was really interested in the miniatures that they made. Definitely was. And you just saw that blog address scroll by there. There are hundreds of blog posts on Lord of the Rings. And that's, I'm not exaggerating or kidding. There's tons of them. There's some step-by-step terrain posts there. Oh yeah, that's the other thing, is that I am also going to be making Lord of the Rings terrain. I want to make Osgiliath style terrain. I want to make, obviously, Rohan style terrain, because I love making terrain, And now that I'm going to be playing Lord of the Rings again, well, I need me some terrain. And I want to have more than just the generic couple of houses that we had and trees and stuff. That anybody can have a table like that. I want to have me something real nifty. So that's I'm going to be making a whole new batch of terrain. That'll most of it'll be for the patrons. It's a little bit hard to make terrain on a YouTube live. A little bit difficult. If I can figure out a way, I'll try and do that. But to me, let's just say there's a little bit of noise that happens, and you probably would not be able to hear me. Because if I'm working with my pink foam and I'm cutting into that, I can't really be looking at chats, and like I said, you probably wouldn't be able to hear me anyways. Alright. Let's go a touch lighter along here, this leading edge of this robe. And I am gonna, I don't want to go too extreme with the adding of lights on the underside of these holes in the garments, but something needs to be there. Here, let's get that a little lighter too. And now he's got himself some nice shape going there. So this is and that's what we started with next to him there. Then we moved along to something along that line. And now this, but let's go here. We are going to grab some of these guys from Secret Weapon here. So red rust, old rust, yellow rust. We're going to start with the old rust first. I'm going to have to move my water there. Alright, so you can see it's a nice red. Here, let's grab a different brush here. I'm going to go back to this guy now, because he's ready for some rust effects, but I'm also going to put out, almost forgot, this is some of the, is that yellow rust? That's red rust. Now we got yellow rust. That's this one here. And sometimes I always have these pins nearby so I can just kind of punch through whatever is blocking the nozzle. Now I'm also going to take some of the Fire Slayer flesh. That's the contrast Fire Slayer flesh. We're going to mix those together, thin it down, and now we're going to add some of that Corrosion. We're going to start with some of the darker effects here, and remember we wanted to focus in on the armor. See how that is a nice, see how it just gets down into those crevices there? Like all weathering, too much can be too much, and it can get to be too much in a big hurry. So that's why we're gonna not go too wild with this here. We will get some on the face, also sort of darken the eyebrows there a little bit. Now on our shield, the other side here, let's get ourselves a little bit of rust. How do you know when to stop and say it's finished? Ask Gary. I always seem to go too far. I think, well, you start to just develop a sixth sense. That's for sure, because I can remember. Now we're going to add a little bit of lighter rust in here. I had some freehand designs. These are in the early days, and the folks I was doing it for, they'd say, well, we really love that freehand design, but boy, that just stands out way too much. It just kind of looks like it was printed on. It's fantastic, but can you tone that down? And that's from that day forward. Now we're going to add some of the yellow rust in here, and we'll just leave it. Just that little bit there, and leave it. So we've got our light there. But remember, this is why we left this darker here, because we wanted to have that lighter rust show up in that area. Now we've also got to do a similar thing down here. So that was just, it's something that's stuck in my mind ever since, is that don't get that freehand design too overpowering. See, look at the nice, rich, light rust. Let's do some, maybe a touch more in there. This is why I left the chest arm be a little bit darker, because I knew I wanted to do that sort of effect in there. What is it? The chipping and such on vehicles. That is something that easily goes too far too fast. Now, when I'm doing the historical vehicles, I try to err on the side of caution and just do a lot less. Now, when it's fantasy stuff like this, I mean, it's fantasy. Sorry, folks, none of this actually exists. Now we're taking some of our fluorescent paint, mixing it with our Snakebite leather. Yeah, now we're getting a little more depth into the wood grain here. But with fantasy figures, maybe you have a little more license to go. You got some leeway there. Just to, you can have as much as you want. It's always your figure. You do what you want. But I guess it depends on that level of realism. I know for me, I love my Sky Earth non-metallics. And there's folks that don't like that because they say it's not realistic. But then when I look at all the images of actual cosplayers wearing armor out in the woods and doing stuff, well, I see the woods, I see the person across from them, I see the person standing around them. And that's why I did that on the crossbowmen and my halberds, all of those. And I'm going to be doing some Gondor warriors too. So there, see how we're starting now. Let's get some of this, let's get some more bluishness to this. And it's not going to be green. It's actually going to be a touch of blue there. Here, let's get some of this wood grain for you. Guess what? It's also going to be some of my gray. There we are. Just a suggestion. A little different color there, and now some of our metal here. Because some rust is great, that's fantastic. Some of the greenish glow is great. But I'm just trying to balance all that. Let's see if I can't. Let's get some of the contrast green. And I'm just going to see if I can't. There. I just wanted to infuse a little bit of that back into his armor there. Now here, I'm going to take some of the wildwood and we're going to mix it with that blue. Yeah, a little more of the wildwood. Send that down. I'll throw some of that over some parts of the cloak there. To, again, darken it down, but not black. It's got, see, and it's transparent. Here, let's hit our armor. Once again, this is a little bit more of the yellow rust. Right there. And there, I might even, there is a yellow, I think this is orange rust. Sorry, it's not yellow rust. This is orange rust. There is a yellow rust that goes one step further than this. Okay, some more in our armor there. Now let's do some work on our skulls over here. Just picking up a little more of a glow onto them. Maybe some more lights here on the clothing. Maybe unify things a little more. And this is where that refinement comes in. It's how long do you want to spend refining things? Let's do some more work on the hair over here. And that is essentially just the contrast paint mixed with a little bit of that mint green, that light bluish green, just to, I'm almost trying to mask that mesh point where the greenish glow starts to become something else. Because if it's all just green glow, then it is that much, it's that really simple, basically the simple GW paint thing, and that's not really what I'm looking for. Now let's take some of that orange. See how much brighter that can be. I just want to, here, that might be a little too much. I'm going to tone that down a little bit. This is more like what the yellow rust is. Oh, the other thing about the secret weapon, the weathering paints, and this is true for all of the weathering paints, and I use them for flesh tone, I use them for lots of other things besides weathering, is that they dry really super matte. That's always good to know. Now I want to go back into here. Just get a little more of my lighter rust color in there. A touch more. Like I said before, just to try and manage that desire to have a whole bunch of really cool rust effects with enough is enough and too much is too much. This certainly needs a few lighter touches on the sword blade in places, but we're going to break this up. See how we just, it is not one continuous line, it's all broken there. Now this sculpt also dictates that because it's obviously sculpted that way. You can see the chips in here. There's plenty of little chips and divots taken out of this sword blade along the edge. I do this side too. Let's get some, we'll do some highlights on the hair and then maybe take some of our Wildwood contrast paint here. Let's create some darks again. So it's not black lining. We're not even using, it's not even a glaze of the contrast paint. It's just we're fortifying some darks here. Yeah, look at that. That's, like I said, it does not have to be so difficult. Doesn't have to be difficult. Let's do some of the shading around that green in the eyes that we've done on some of the other ones. And if it's not exactly lined up where you can see it easily, I apologize for that, but I also have to be able to see it. So I try to make it where you guys can see it as well as possible, but there are times where I just have to hold it in a way where maybe you can't see it quite so well. Now, we're gonna go back into some of our fluorescent here and add a little more finishing to some areas, make some areas lighter, because now I've got, I know what my latest colors are going to be, from the sword, from the glow in the eyes, the rust effects. So this is where I can go in here now and maybe add some more of the lighter green highlights, and I can certainly go much further. I don't want to go too far, because then it's just, why would the end of the sleeve have a highlight that's lighter than the metal on the sword? That doesn't make any sense. Gonna get a little more of the greenish glow here on the top of his head. Gonna make some of this a little lighter too. Yeah, that's just really fun. Now where is, I think this is another one that has there's a little different type of shield. This is another, again, this is part of the army painting series right here. So you can see how much, that's almost straight mint green with some lighter highlights in there, but then you can see our rust colors that also work their way in there. I think of all the, as much as I love my Easterlings, and that was another, I've done 4, let's see, I've done 3 army painting series so far for Lord of the Rings. No, actually it's 4. Holy smokes. Easterlings, and I love that series. I think that was series 3. Then I did the Morgul Knights. Then I did the Army of the Dead, then Morgul Knights. And then my most recent series is the Rohan series. That's the Rohan Infantry. I'm going to be doing another series on the Rohan Cavalry. I'll introduce that to you either later this week or at some point in the next few weeks. I'll be painting I've got the new Eowyn set, but I also have the old Eowyn, the metal one. And what I'll do is I'll paint one for the patrons, and then the other one will be a live session. Now I need to get some kind of a highlight along that edge, and just a little bit, a little touch of it. So see what we've got there now. This is the Reaper Miniatures. No, that's the Secret Weapon Pale Green Verdigris. My apologies. And that, it does make a fantastic verdigris effect, but I love it for putting some greenishness to my skin tones. And now we're making that lighter, but it also has a little bit more of a cooler look to it, whereas that's more of a warm look up there. Here's a little more work on the skulls. Now we're going to go back to our Snakebite leather, remember that. And this is where we're mixing it with our regular paint. So we got some wildwood in there too. And it's nice, we've got this really nifty sort of semi-translucent lighter color. And this will let us make some quick skulls here. We don't want them to all to just be that bleached bone color, because skulls, really what they do, what are bones, they start to take in those minerals and they actually get darker. They don't get really lighter. I mean, maybe if they're out in the desert somewhere being, well, bleached by the sun, well, then they're sun bleached. Otherwise, not so much. Just working on our skulls on the base here. And like I said, these are from Green Stuff World. Secret Weapon Miniatures also has their sack of skulls. So I think there's plenty of options for dressing up your army of the dead. And I'll also probably paint another Morgul Knight. Now, again, those Morgul Knights were all in oils, because, as I mentioned, I love my oil painting. You've got that same sort of yellowish tan color. Let's get a little bit of mustache going there. Let's get a touch lighter in some of the hair. And up here too, maybe some lights on the blade itself. See if I can't find some areas to put some of this tan here. I don't want to wipe out my green effect completely, but I also want to have something besides just green on here. I like this idea here. We've got some of this bluish gray. That is going to end up in that crevice there. Let's do a touch more of this in a few places. Maybe even on our marble, which, once again, for the folks that missed it, the bases, it's white regular Sculpey, not the Super Sculpey, because the Super Sculpey, that it'll break mostly, tends to be more rubbery than the other Sculpies. But the biggest thing is that it's super hard to carve. Most tools just kind of bounce off of it. They don't really carve it so much. There's a little touch of that mint green there. Let's get a little bit of... I need some more light down in here. But also want to make that a little more gray. Scabbard needs a little touch of light. Just there. Same thing. And we'll incorporate some of that onto his sleeve. That shield needs some kind of something else besides just dark under there. Don't want to do too much in the way of reflected light, but there's got to be something. I just took some of my lighter fluorescent paint there. That needed that. This is where we can now start enjoy all of the just those previous layers. So we did our rust effects there. You can see, you know, the difference in the store blade. So this one doesn't really have the rust effect. This one does. So now it looks way more tarnished. So I will do now what we've just been doing on this guy here. We're going to do that on this one. Once again, we're going to go into our secret weapon, Old Rust. See how we're focusing on basically the crevices in the armor there. Treating this as a really controlled glaze for sure. Now you know I didn't go too wild with all of the highlights and everything on the armor because, well, knew this stage was coming. So now here, we're going to get ourselves some rust and tarnish on that blade, but it's not just for the blade. Let's put some on the face. Let's get some more. Now mixing a little bit of the red rust with the old rust. And then the orange rust will come in there as well. Oops, sorry. Again, sometimes these things are going to wander to a place that might be hard for you to see. There's not much I can do about that because I just have to move it where it's good for me to see it. Now that's the orange rust. We'll do some of that right here, and you'll see what the plan is in just a second here. Now let's get some of that nice yellow rust color there up on the blade, and then I'll take some of the red rust here, and let's just glaze that in right, boom, right there. So see, all this was set up before. See, we've got our highlight here. All of that, the bluish color there, shows up a little bit more because we added now. Let's get a little bit of the lighter orange rust. Now, I gotta be careful because it's gonna end up looking too much like the de facto gold color here. We don't want that. Just a few dots there. And just a few dots here. So now we've got lots of neat rust working its way along our sword blade. Let's get some hits on the helmet here. Now you can see we were able to preserve so much of the original glazing colors that we did there. I don't have to do quite as much of this. That's it. We're starting to add ourselves some rust now to the helmet. It's because it's a nifty glaze, we had to put the green down first. That's our green glow. Hey, Gary, 3 in a row now, and well, we still have multiple Garys. I think, what was it on the one with the prawn? We had, what do we have, 3 Garys on there at one point? I mean, this one feels like we only have 2. It feels like we're missing. We're lacking in Garys. This is back to the yellow, no, the orange rust, not the yellow rust. What I could do, I could even say almost freehand a bit of filigree on the side of the helmet there, but now that's something I would do. If this was supposed to be, for golden demons or whatever, then that might be well worth it, is to actually filigree a pattern in there. But look at what happened here. Can you see how the orange rust here, well, make it a little bit lighter right there. I'll take some of that away now. There. I'll incorporate that in. So now this part here, it's lighter underneath. You would think, well, that's supposed to be darker there. Yeah, it's got to be darker there. Well, that's the niftiness of the rust and oxidization. Here, let's do a little more. Now, I might have to change my glove because I'm seeing that the glove is a kaleidoscope of colors right now. It might be distracting from the figure, but we're doing this again. See, we just added that lighter rust color in there. Now, see how you got that band there? You got the light rust there, the light rust underneath. But in the middle is the greenish band, so it's a cooler color there. It's a cooler color. It is darker. That is, I absolutely love doing that. I mean, that is just so much fun. I think that's why I enjoy these guys so much. Look at our armor here now. See, it's got that kind of tarnish there down in the ends. Let's go a little lighter here now with... See, at this point, some of the rust color worked its way into my fluorescent green. So while this is lighter, it's also not quite so pure as some of the other greens that we added after that initial glazing phase. So by default, it's going to tone them down. But now we're back into our Snakebite leather and green mix. Just gonna, there, a little bit of a, just a little light here. Gonna take some of that mint green. Just accentuate a few lights here. All the while remembering that we still have our ace in the hole. We have this lighter, much lighter color here that we've been saving kind of for this last bit of work on the figure. Now we can still do some highlights along ridge lines here. Oh, hey, now we do have 3 Garys. Hey, Randall, how's it going? Sorry about that. It's been like I said, a long day of making videos. But hello to Gary Francis. I knew we would have more than just 1 or 2 Garys at some point. Here, let's add a little more. Let's get some of these cooler greens now. We've been going lighter and lighter. I'm going to go more mid-tone here. Right into this area. There. Like so. Now, actually, the other thing that I haven't done in live sessions that I'm going to start to do, because there's just so many fun things that I want to do, and I just don't have time to do all edited videos, because those videos that you see, especially the recorded ones, like the ones on the Patreon page, that's a minimum of 9 hours to do each of those. And there's a bunch of fun dark sword figures that I want to do with the, oh, what is that, the more of the vellum products. Yeah, so here was the latest one. I'll show you that real quick. This is actually a dark sword figure. It is from the Game of Thrones. I think it's a limited edition, but see that butterfly there on the wing? See that butterfly there? And see the butterfly on the grass? And then there's another butterfly. It's hard to see, but now you can see that butterfly. I'm going to try doing some of that on the Lord of the Rings. Maybe on a Galadriel, if I can. Boy, I don't know if I can find that original sculpt somewhere. But possibly on a Mithril Miniatures Galadriel. And maybe for sure on the White Council diorama thing that I'll be working on. I think I'm going to actually maybe throw some butterflies on that, because hey, Rivendell needs butterflies, I think. Let's go a little bit. Now we're going to go in the other direction here. I don't want that to be too light, but there. Just going to try and pick up a few more of these lights in place. So let's get the eyes again. Down in there. Get the other one. There, so now we're getting ourselves some nice glow in the eyes. And now I'm going to throw some more of the, again, this is the fluorescent green that we've been using right here. It's from, what, scale 75. Oh, thanks, Gary. Here's the other. Now this maybe, I don't know if the ferns could still be. All right, that's more. Again, another Dark Sword figure. This is Dark Sword 25. The orange Monarch Lady was 26, but that's Vellum from Wicked Elf Studios. Really loved that. That was so much fun. Still working in some of these cooler highlights down here. I think I want to, if I have some of the, yeah, I'm going to just make this, basically turn the orange rust into yellow rust. Get this where you can see it. Just like we did on the helmet. There. That's what I'm looking to do. And on his belt buckle. And here. So once again, let's do the same thing. We're going to take the Achillean green. This is some of the wildwood here. Now let's go. We'll get in here. We'll put some dark there. We're also going to put some of that darker blue there. So see now, you've got the interior of the armor, the part that normally would be a shadow color. That's actually a little bit lighter. But what we're going to do now is we'll lighten this up slightly, but it's going to be kind of a grayish. But it's got to have some blue in it for this to work as we want. That's good. Let's get a little more. So this is mint green with the Achillean green. That's the contrast green there. Just trying to get it where you can see it. There. That. So on this side it's green, but over here it's more of the original, maybe the original armor color. Let's go one more level up. So there. See what we got there now? The orange, very much the orange of the rust, but now we have some blue there. I am going to do that same coat down in here in the shadow area. I'm going to throw some of that here. Another little bit of another little touch there on the, right there on his chainmail and on the sword. Some of it right there. Just to get some of the original steel and that sort, we're doing that here. So this is the Achillean green mixed with the mint green, which is basically turquoise, kind of a bluish. Yeah. See how we're starting to get a little suggestion out of the original steel there. Oh, thank you very much, Hans. Much appreciated. It's certainly it's a different approach. I don't necessarily like to use the painterly expression, but it kind of is, I suppose, when you really think about it. Now we're going to double down some more on this mint green with the Achillean green. That's, again, a contrast paint mixed with just a regular old Reaper paint. Remember what we did on this side over here? We're doing something like that now over here. But welcome in, Hans. Glad that you could check this out now. Definitely be sure to... Now, well, in whatever copious free time we all have, because most of us don't have really any. But this is what it looked like not all that long ago. That's what we started with, and you can see how we've worked in these cooler colors and warmer colors. We got the glow in there. Now we've added our rust, and we've got, obviously, this is another, again, much older one that doesn't have all of these nifty lighting effects, the rust, the shield there. Now let's go back to this guy now. This is, I'm going to grab some of the contrast green again, and this is my fluorescent green. I'm going to go back a little bit. Yeah, this is what I was hoping to add. We're sort of going back to what we did in the very early stages. But this time, instead of using it to lighten things, we're actually using it to make things darker. We're actually, what was at one point something that lightened colors is now something that shades them darker. And that's where that whole notion of context comes in. Because it's, what is it compared to? Now, I don't want every single one of these crevices down in here to be that dirty brown. So here, I think I'm going to see what happens. So a couple of things happening here. It lightens up that crevice a little bit. It makes it green, but it's also a cooler green. So we switched away from just the brownish color there. Not going to wipe that all out. We like that in some of those places. But remember how there could be too much rust in spots? Well, there was almost too much of the dark brown there. It was basically warm versus warm. Even though you said, but wait a minute, one was much darker than the other. That's true. But we were lacking that extra interest. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to go back to my controls, and we're going to do the same thing where we turn out the saturation. So now, you can see we still have plenty of shape there, lights and darks, right? Now let's bring the color back. And now all of a sudden our rust is back here, but now you see the difference in the temperature there, temperature and intensity. While this is a dark, believe it or not, what I just put down here, pretty much this dark, that's now at this point being washed into the crevice, could be considered a more pure saturated color than our highlights. And I'm not trying to blow people's minds too much. All I can say is that when I was in art school, this notion of, wait a minute, a darker color or a cooler color that's more saturated is going to catch the eye more than a either lighter or warmer color. It was blowing my mind. And at just one point, it finally sort of clicked, and I understood what that was all about. But it took a while and a heck of a lot of practice. So here, we're doing the same thing. It's not a glaze at all. This is just straight up paint. There's no liquid in this. It's just a contrast paint that's sort of creating the liquid that we're using. And then the super transparency of the fluorescent paints. I need to get my chat back up here 1 second. Now we are going to grab some of that. This is the Pro Acryl here, this bright yellow green. That's going to be mixed with our fluorescent green here. And this is where we go into that stage where we're refining stuff. This is where we are going to make that glow a little more, get towards the yellow. it's those initial, I always call it initial glazing and shaded base coat. In every recorded video, and the Garys know all about this, they've seen plenty of those videos. It always starts off with that shaded base coat and the initial glazing. And all that is, it's just, you're making a little bit of a road map. It's sort of like Waze for painting. It's sort of giving you their Google Maps for painting. It's giving you a general direction to head in. Yeah, look at the difference there. So you could almost say maybe that's the original robe color, that sort of tan, brown, whatever. And then around it, we're going to add these other more ethereal green colors. Now we've added a bunch of the yellow stuff. Let's go here even more with the mint green and the secret weapon pale verdigris green, which in some places has almost been used as basically a metal color. And again, I don't want to do too much of that on the hand. I think I want to go back to, we've got our, was it the Fire Slayer flesh? So we're mixing some of our fluorescent green with that. Sort of makes a grayish whatever. We can lighten that a bit. So it has the green in there, but it's still got some of that original, maybe the original skin color or whatever, or the decaying flesh color. Now, just like we did over here, I'm starting to add in some of the, maybe the original robe color. So maybe add a like a white robe or something, like so. So say we're interrupting some of that, the glow right there. Let's do some more. I think it's going to extend out to here. And to me, this is really where I start to have a blast. And what's our phrase that pays that we say in every single video? If a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. Oh, look, it can even be used here on our marble. Creates that color unity. When you have orphan colors, stray colors, whatever you want to call them, it's jarring for the eye. The eye just is kind of like, whoa, what's that? What's that doing there? That shouldn't be there. And it doesn't take somebody, you don't have to have an art degree to know, like, whoa, something ain't quite right here. That shouldn't be there. Here, let's add a little more of the white to this. It's not going to make it pink. There, let's put that right there on the back of his hand. Yeah. And I'm also going to throw a touch of that on the sword blade. It once again, it creates a little more texture on that. We're sort of painting in texture that's not really there. Let's develop the knuckles on his hand. Oh, what the heck. Let's put some more lights on the beard here. And now this, gotta do something with that. It has to stay dark. I'm gonna take some of that's the contrast green, some of the contrast wildwood. Now we've got ourselves a dark green. Bit of a glaze here. That just, there we go. That was just kind of looking fuzzy. It wasn't really, we needed a sharper line there. But not black lining. We're avoiding the whole black lining thing. There's an actual color there. Believe me, there is. Alright, we're going to get some green in here. But we don't want it to be too light and intense. So that's why we're using mostly, it's a lot of the contrast green there. That's it. Gives us a little difference now between the belt loop or the strap that holds the scabbard onto his waist. That's better. Now here, I think I spy some wildwood and Achillean green that's going to be used as a bit of a crazy glaze down in here. Because remember, that's what we started with a glaze. We're kind of returning back to a glaze in a few places. Now I want to get one little right here on this part of his helmet, right on this part. Just like we did on the sword blade. See that it's not just to get highlights there, but see how that's broken? There's actually kind of 3 distinct pieces there. I want that because it connotates that there is still some metal there. It may not be shiny. I need to get a little bit of a light right along this, right here. See that? Just a tiny bit gives it one extra little level of dimension. And how's about a touch more right there? And if you are kind of in for the first time watching this, sort of in the backdrop there, welcome aboard. And you can always watch these from the beginning. And I have dozens of live sessions now. And if you want to just be notified of these, you obviously do the subscribe thing, but you click on the all notifications, and then you get the alert when there's some kind of crazy thing like this is going to happen. I try to do these as often as I can. I wish I could do them every single day, but, well, obviously if I'm uploading a video, that takes a little bit of bandwidth, so there's not quite enough to upload and also do this at the same time. I am hoping eventually to do not just Lord of the Rings battle reports, but terrain videos too. I always loved the game. It was my favorite games. It always has been and always will be my favorite system from GW. And in fact, it's one of the reasons I started to play things like, say, Bolt Action or even the Wild West Exodus, because they just reminded me of the Lord of the Rings mechanics and how much I liked it. And with the reboot and such of the game, I was overjoyed like all the other long-time Lord of the Rings players. And the Gondor War books, yeah, just right in here. This is the thing that can make your chainmail sort of stand out, as every so often, not regularly, but just in every so often, like here, let's one more, and that's it. What have we here? I'm going to put a few lights there. This is back to our Snakebite leather mix there. For his thumb, maybe something more for his beard. perhaps even a few little lighter areas on our marble here. Gonna use bigger brush for that. Going back to my sort of filbert style brushes here. My homemade filberts. There. Just a little over the top. Oh, Hans, as I've held off on a wet palette, but seeing you work. Well, and now here's the thing. And I believe I've got one that's still under construction. So before the whole running out to spend $30 on a wet palette or something like that, let me show you something here real quick. So this right here, what you see, that is just here. Let me get this out. I have all the component parts. Look at this. So that's just the lid of a Chinese food container there. That's just a chamois sponge. And that's just parchment paper. And I can tell you right now, the food that was in this container, and see the bottom becomes the lid, and you just snap that right over the top and it seals it nice and tight. And actually it tends to, I don't know, the people that I see with those $30 wet palettes, they're having to clean them out with like rubbing alcohol and stuff, and they get all moldy, and I don't know. These don't do that. So for essentially free, you know, you get a little bit of parchment paper, a little bit of the chamois sponge, which are not expensive. You got yourself a homemade wet palette. I might have to do a short video on that or something, because I just it drives me nuts seeing these folks. They spend all this money on a wet palette, and be doggone if it doesn't just seem to be kind of a hassle to maintain. I had to go to the wet palettes because for whatever reason Chicago is now like the wettest place in the universe, and it just rains all the time, and we constantly have fans going. You can probably hear some of those in the background. And the weird thing is while it doesn't necessarily dry out the air so much like in wintertime, there's wind blowing on the palette, and it was drying out the paint in no time flat. So I kind of, out of desperation, had to make myself a wet palette. Didn't realize how successful I was going to be. I did not think that was going to happen. So just working my way back into some of these skulls. There. So here's the two that we've been focusing in on. But let's do a little side by side here. Let's get all three of these. So this is kind of where we started here. Then we did our contrast glazes over the top of that. And then we're evolving our way towards that. Hans is, thanks for the tip. And let's see. Now, general sews, I love that. We've been trying to get away from the breaded chicken stuff, so it's been more chicken almond ding since then. But geez, that's making me hungry for Chinese food right now, and it is 2:51 a.m. Who knows? They're probably gonna have me some dreams about, I don't know, General Tso's chicken tonight maybe. I'll actually take some of that red rust in there. Now it's gonna have a little bit more of almost a pinkish look to it. Yeah, because we save those containers for a lot of our basing stuff. Bits of Sculpey, because when you break up the Sculpey, you have tons of little pieces of it. So here we go. So here is some of that white Sculpey that I was telling you about. Look at how it breaks. I mean, doesn't that look really natural? But when you break pieces off of this, you get tons of little bits. So here's stuff where I cut them basically into strips and bricks. That was originally what that was for, was to kind of hang on to all of our bits of Sculpey and static grass and everything else. And out of desperation, I needed a wet palette. And I just said, wait a minute, what the heck is a wet palette but a sealable plastic container? Hopefully your Chinese food container is also a sealable plastic container, or you're not gonna end up with much of it left when you get it home. Who knew that it would seal so effectively? Now this is another thing we're starting to do. See how we're adding the lighter colors into the crevices? That is something that kind of intrigues people a bit. And it's like, wait a minute, you're adding lighter colors into the shadow areas? Kind of. They're lighter, but they're also opposites. Because now we're starting to add basically some red here. This is kind of that last little level of nifty real. See what I just did there? See on that shadow area? I added that reddishness to it. Here's some more. So I strongly advocate munching on some yummy Chinese food, and you can say, I'm making a wet palette. I'm saving money. So treat yourself maybe to some, well, Kathy would love scab rangoons. That's what I call crab rangoons. So treat yourself to some yummy Chinese food, because in the end, you'll have the makings of a fantastic wet palette. I have the added bonus that the Chinese food container, as you can see, the aspect ratio almost matches perfectly my palette camera. So that's just bonus on top of bonus right there. Now we're making our belt a little lighter. This is that really fun refinement stage. This is the hardest thing for people to sort of absorb is, well, I could use more colorful metaphors, but we'll just say it doesn't look like much for a long time until all of a sudden, boom. And that's what people say is that, wait a minute, did you just grab a finished one? Because that looked like nothing just a few minutes ago. What the heck just happened here? That is the difference in this approach. You have to steady yourself, because in the initial phases, it doesn't look like much of anything. You just have to know that kind of at the end of the rainbow is that pot of gold, but the rainbow looks like a dumpster at the start. That's just, don't know, have any better way of describing it, really. Now, I'm going to add one last bit of, a couple of those knuckles. Yeah, that's good enough. So let's go back into this area. So this is what I mean where, see the secret weapon rust colors? Look, let's take something like this, We'll take some of this green here. Lighten it up. Now we're making skin tones. Yeah, we're making some really nifty skin tone colors, but there's still a hint of green to this. Yeah, look at this. We're taking, this is going over the green now. Watch what's going to happen here. We're going to make it even, a bit lighter, like this. And I'll show you in a second what it is we're after here. There. All right. So, watch what happens to this area here when we kill Oh, fuse the ice. I've got to get back to work. Watch it all later. Oh, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And yeah, definitely come back and catch the rest. So there we go. Look at that. It just looks like a light right in there where my finger is. We bring the color back. And now you can distinctly see the reddishness here. Almost a bluish green there and a distinct yellow green there. And it's not taken forever because remember we've been working on multiple figures here. That Army of the Dead series. Each of the army painting series is roughly 12 and a half to 13 hours long, usually 5 episodes. Starts with basing. Like I said, like these scopy bases here. That's the very first thing we tackle, and I'm about to film 2 more basing videos tomorrow for the, the Warcry, actually for a couple of Warcry factions and for my Haradrim. That's my next Lord of the Rings series that I'm doing. Because believe it or not, the army, my good friend Rich, man, we actually went to high school. We were at the same high school together all those years ago. But he got me into Lord of the Rings, and the army that he had, the one that it drove me nuts facing it, was his army of Harad. So maybe he plays the army of the dead. I play my Harad against that. So see how we're switching this around? Look at that. So many different nifty colors going on. Now let's go back to more towards that bluish. Oh, that's the mint green again. It's from Reaper. And it looks so dark on the palette, right? Doesn't look so dark anymore, does it? Doesn't look quite so dark anymore. Why? Look at this. Here, let's get some of this. I think you can see the difference in that in the palette. Here, let's get a close-up of that. Boom. So, again, you can't see my brush or my cursor. Well, you can see the brush now. There we go. So see how that's that much lighter that is? But on the figure, it looks like we just put white on there, but it's not. This is why when you prime something white or you prime it black or whatever and you just paint the face and nothing else, you get that immediate gratification of, oh, look, you got the face, it's painted, it's beautiful. But then as you paint the stuff around it, you go, oh, what the heck happened to my face? What's going on here? And then you start to realize that, oh, yeah, everything looks dark next to that white primer, or vice versa with the black primer. So I'm just throwing in a few little. I don't want to lose the kind of that reddish staining there that's on the edge of the sleeve. Let's see, we're going to tint this down. Now this is more of a glaze. There's more water in this. There's nothing that says, oh, I can only do glazing in the initial glazing. I can't do it now. No, you can always do it. There, let's go a little more with our light red. So now this is not quite as yellow as what we did here with the armor, the rust down in that area. Oop, I gotta get my chat over here. Oh, Gary says, I'll never paint as well as you, but your videos have made my painting improve and a lot more fun. Boy, those are 2 crucial things because, I mean, well, obviously, we all have those, just so many things that happen with the daily grind, and this has to be fun because otherwise, why do it? If it's just going to be, and some people, I feel bad because it really is, it's kind of like a chore. They feel like, oh, well, I have to go paint now. It just makes me sad because, well, I have to go paint. I got to do it. It's the job. That's what pays the mortgage here. Well, hopefully does. But boy, if it wasn't fun, I'd sure as heck be doing something else. I would not just be staying with it just for staying with it. So see, we just added some darks there now. Look at that. Right there on the edge of that. But I'm just glad it's making it more fun for you, because I've seen so many people essentially just quit on painting. They just say, you know what? It's like having another job. And it's one thing if it's work, but you're having fun, you're making yourself a new army or whatever, and it's a little bit of work getting those figures prepped and making the bases and stuff. Now let's get some more of this. Just to interject here, I want to get some more other colors down here besides just the green tones. But it's got to be more fun, otherwise you just won't want to do it. You'll have all those figures half painted or barely painted looking back at you, which will make you feel guilty or bad or whatever. And you're not going to want to be reminded of it, so what are you going to do? You're just going to put it away to get it out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's how an awful lot of people can sometimes go years without painting miniatures. Yeah, let's go a little further with this here. I'm going to add more of that, a little more of my ivory into that. So we've got this, see, the brighter, warmer stuff going on there, but now we've got this basically a kind of a dirty reddish color here. That's starting to get a little bit of highlights there. Starts to show off some of the holes that are there, but now we got a distinct difference between the two sections of the cloak there. I want to go, boy, just a little brighter. Just a touch more right here and there. Yeah. So all of those, we couldn't really see that when we were at this stage. It's basically the same body. The arms, well, the shield is different and the sword arm is different, but it's essentially the same body, and now you can see all those little holes in there. See how we took advantage of all of this initial, again, those are the contrast paints that we've then since taken advantage of. And we're gonna try something here. We're gonna add a little bit of we haven't done this really yet. We're adding some of the Achillean green. That's into our contrast green, into our fluorescent. And I'm gonna go over here. And I'm going to, that's what I'm making some of my shadows almost, I don't want to say a bluish green, but yeah, look at that. But it's also an intense color there. And now we're going to do something here. Hopefully this, you can see what's happening. So right in this area here, bang, there too. Over here. So whereas over here it's the upper surface is the greenish stuff. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reverse that. We just reversed this. So look what we got. It's the red here. Here in some of the shadow areas it's the reddish brown, but look at that. Now we've got this sort of a bluish green in our shadow areas. So we're changing the color of our shadow areas a bit. And Gary says actually the movies wish they looked this good. And I'm just something about these guys that there's the story of them interested me too. So it's for any army that I enjoy. The miniatures, yes, gotta enjoy the miniatures. But it really helps if there's some kind of a fun story behind it that you can enjoy. Now here we're taking that same Achillean green, and now see it shades that darker, but it's also tinting it more towards blue. And this is what I advocate with the contrast paints is think of a slightly different way of using them. Like that's what we're going to do here. Look out, that doesn't just make it darker. Let's get a little more of the Achillean green, which makes it even more of a bluish color. Even more blue down here in this shadow area. Over here. So what we've got, believe it or not, is actually in the shadow area is some of the most saturated color right in there as we finish out that glaze. So I just did there, see that? A very, like almost the most saturated color in this whole side of him. And it's down in a shadow area there. Oh, I'm going to say in this shadow area, we're going to do the same thing. Yeah. That's just... I love it with these guys because it's almost like there's no right or wrong color somewhere. And I really love this juxtaposition of, oh look, here it's more bluish, here it's more yellow. Now we got some reds going, look at that. So I just took the contrast paint, that's the Achillean green, and look at what we just shaded that a nice, give it that more of a bluish look. So Hans says, did you find it easier, more enjoyable to paint figures with movement and detail? That's for sure. I know other people have used the phrase too, but Kathy and I, when we say it felt like the miniature painted itself, that's when you enjoyed the miniature. Now here's another one that sort of just painted itself. This is one I did on, I think, the last live stream. This is from Creature Caster. It just became available today. So this is my last live session, so check this out. This guy, I mean, he's huge. This was almost 3 hours of painting just on this guy. But it felt like he was painting himself because there was so much fun. So many fun areas on this guy. And of course there was the giant Cheeto. And you have to watch the video to figure out what the giant Cheeto is. Yeah, those are magical figures. The Dark Sword ones tend to be that sort of figure. They just kind of paint themselves because they're so well sculpted and the detail is nice. As we're doing another one of our glazing things here. Now it's kind of wet right now, but once it dries, you'll be able to see the difference. What was interesting, I didn't think I would enjoy the Rohan figures quite as much, and you'll see those when I work on the Eowyn. I got Eowyn, Theoden, Eomer. I've got a whole bunch of Rohan figures. That's the other army that I wanted to do, because again, Rich, who got me hooked on the game, he also had a Rohan army, and I wanted one too, because it seemed like it would be very fun. I'm basically making as many different Lord of the Rings armies as I can. So see, now it's less of a glow there, but now it's more of a shadow area in there. Here, but I don't want it to be too smooth. Now here we need a little more definition in the sleeve areas. So again, this is how we can just develop something like this. Look at this. See how I don't want to say cleaning it up, but in effect it is a little bit of that. Right here, I'm going to get just a bit more of the dark. Yep. Look what we got. We have, what's interesting is that this bluish green now actually stands out more than the rust color that's down here. It's another one of those fun little juxtapositions of that warm and cool, the saturated versus unsaturated. I know people think that they've got to have art degrees to figure all this stuff out. Heck, I all I got is a bachelor's degree in commercial art, and I can figure it out. And it's in some ways, I almost wish people didn't talk or think about color wheels because man, all it did was just complicate things for me. I had no fun with that whole color wheel thing when I was in school. If they just skipped that and just said, "Look, this is the deal," could have saved a whole bunch of just misery. And hopefully this does the same for you. Oh, there Gary says, oh, thanks very much. Oh my gosh. He's been watching since the painting pyramid days, which means I've been warping his mind since what, 2013, 2014? That's pretty much the original painting pyramid era. Oh, well, thank you. Oh, I really appreciate that. I'm just really glad that, I don't know, just this sort of cut out the mystery, made things a little more just, okay, yeah, there's really no secret science to this. There's some thought to it, but, yeah, it really doesn't have to be super complicated. And actually, as Gary mentions, that the changing of the technique, believe it or not, that Army of the Dead, the guy you're seeing in the pictures, the references, he was painted years ago. And by years, I'm talking about, around the time of 2014-ish, somewhere in there. Maybe even 2013. But yet, and I have totally different materials. That the colors that I used on him, for the most part, either don't have anymore, or they don't exist anymore. So that sometimes changes how you approach things. As I had just some more darks in here. These contrast paints, they're very different. I never would have used them, but people were asking for substitutes for the Reaper paints, the Reaper clears, and that sort of thing. The only way that I could figure out how to do an equivalent that everybody could get to was to find contrast paints that mirrored what the Reaper clears and liner paints do. Now what I'm doing, speaking of Reaper paints, I'm adding that mint green into my Keelian mix, and what we're doing is we're going back into this to lighten things up, but with a cooler tone. It's also more opaque. We're going to do some more here. Yeah. Now, look at how it's kind of a bluish next to that yellow that's over there. Let's continue that even closer to the yellow. Why not? I also need to work in some red there. Oh, now we got hometown Gary, Chicago. He says that it does free up his painting, and boy, that was, as anyone who's talked to me knows, that's been sort of an obsession, is to free people up a little bit from those norms of, well, it's got to be this way. You must do glazing and layering, and it must be in this order. When I do the vehicles and stuff, oh my goodness, people say, well, gee, it has to be this way, right? You must be doing it this way. So let me see if I can find a vehicle that's done here. Yeah. So this one here, I believe, was actually painted with weathering powders and rubbing alcohol. That is not something that is normally advocated, believe me. Is painting with rubbing powders and rubbing alcohol. And I think I've done that a couple of times on vehicles. So again, that's more rules being broken. Actually, that's another, well, it's not a live session, but it's another one of my painting videos on the channel here. I've got a captured Sharpie one, because I love doing my historicals, so you will be seeing some historicals again here, as now I start to add some of that blue over here. Oh, let's find some more over here. I'm going to go back here. Let's see if we can't do a similar thing there. yeah, I'm just enjoying the heck out of this. I'm going to go a little lighter on this edge of this cloak, because this to me then actually creates a little bit of a glow. Here we are. There. And as I said, the more of something like that you add, it gets a little bit more opaque, but some of the Reaper paints, especially the clears and liners, because there's a little bit of the transparency to them, they have a lot of pigment, but still somewhat transparent. You can do some different things. It looks like it's the same color, but there's a little difference in how it's formulated. Use that in your favor, because I know there's some folks that kind of just fight that. So I tried a few other techniques for a while, but reverted back to the shaded base coat. Yes, there's just something about the figure that can just kind of start out like this and then move to this and then move to this. And here's the other thing too. There was a practical reason behind this, because I had to paint hundreds of skinks, and because my Lizardman army was skinks and Croxigors. That's what I loved. But that meant painting a whole bunch of skinks, and well, there was no way I was going to paint those all in one sitting. And when you need to try and remember all these layers and everything else, what if you just kept it to a few simple colors, and that's it? And I think you can see here, how many colors did I add to the palette? All I did was I added those couple of secret weapon colors, or not, yeah, the rust colors. I could have done a similar thing using the contrast paints, but I wanted to show you how the secret weapon ones work, because I enjoy the secret weapon stuff. I just added a few more of these yellow highlights right here. Or, I'm sorry, more of a light blue, and now we're starting to get more into we're taking that ivory, mixing it with our blue, and now we're just starting to find ourselves a few. You say, well, why are you've been darkening down stuff here, why are you lightening stuff down there? That is the ethereal part of it. That's the glow part of it, basically. Let's do some more on this side. And that's the fun of this, is this going back and forth here. Let's take some of our original green here. Maybe we'll take some of that blue. And let's see what we can do with the glow that's here. Maybe have that drop down into this part of the marble here. So yeah, there's pretty much almost all of the original painting pyramid videos I think are available to the patrons now, and I think I put up a couple of more just in the last month. It was just to illustrate certain ideas. This notion that your technique can change but stay the same. It changes. Well, there's been so many changes in the industry. See that? Now that's the contrast paint there. But because of what it's up against here, it looks like it's lighter. It's not. It's still just as dark as it was. But in this now there's a touch of the other paint in there too. I will say that. But in the context of that darker marble, it looks, or stone, it could just be stone, it looks lighter. Here, let's tiny touch of, yeah. See, we're starting to, oh, now you can see it. We're starting to work that in there. But now, I'm actually we're gonna reverse things again. So now I just put some of that same green, that's down in my shadow areas. So we have that sort of pinkish color as the highlight, but now some of that green has worked its way into these shadows. Yeah, to me, this is, well, this is my reward. It's like, I guess if somebody was to sit down and play video games or something like that after a really rough day of just having to hack away at stuff, this is sort of this is my reward. This is my fun time here. Just trying to share some of it with you guys. We're taking the same green that we were just using as a light down here. Well, look at it now. Now it's a dark. Now we're shading things darker with the exact same color. We haven't changed anything. This is what makes things a little bit easier to remember, a little bit easier to replicate, because I mean, that guy that's over there, rest assured, I basically absolutely none of the same colors as far as actual paints. Zero are the same between the two of these, because that was, well, basically over 6 years ago at least. I didn't have this stuff. That didn't exist. Did not exist back then. I think this is another problem, and Kathy and I have talked about this a lot. I know I've talked about it with Trevor and such. If people don't grow, they find their one thing that this is successful. This works for me, which is fantastic. But if you never change from that, eventually it's going to get to be the same old thing. It's going to get boring. And boring is not fun. You will not want to keep painting and say, yeah, I've done that already. There's no new challenges to it, or it's kind of the same old grind. Now let's look at our other one here, and let's see if we can do some of this same stuff on him. So I've just had a real blast on this guy here. Look at all the differences in that. See how now we have shading across his helmet, and yet here it's more of, this is almost like the original metal color here, but then this is more of the greenish glow. We've added definitely some glow to the base there. Let's just play with this one for a little bit here. I'm going to use some of that same. We'll do some glazes on him too. Hey, first, last. Yay. I had predicted you were going to be here. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, what's the delay? It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 8 seconds from when you actually type in your chat thing and when I see it. At least that's about what my calculation is. Yeah, now we got all this nifty color in the shield here, so I am going to try and set that off with some of these green glazes here. Maybe we're going to go a touch cooler. That's where the mint green comes in. That's good. Yeah. We've got plenty of the warmer greens, a little less of the cooler greens. Now, the other advantage of this too is that, well, no two guys in the army really should be identical when you think about it. This is another way to make sure that, well, the army project doesn't get quite as boring, because each of these guys, I'm treating them quite the individuals here. This is just, I love doing the glowy stuff. And oh yeah, today the color scheme for the Warcry Cipher Lords, that's it, I'll remember. We're gonna have dark skin on them, like bluish black, but fluorescent bluish black. skin tones. You got that right. And we're going to have glowing weapons, probably a greenish glow like this. So that is going to be, army paintings. What am I at? 14, right? Yeah. Because right now, this was a fun thing here. Speaking of experiments, where did you go? Here you are. So this is something brand new for me. This is actually metallic paints here, but as you can see, there's pinks in there. This was my TMM, but it's also TMM with OSL. Oh, and yeah, some more basing. So that's another series that is underway right now. That's series 13. So let's see. Cipher Lords are series 14. The Haradrim are going to be series 15. Yeah, wow. And just think each of those is basically 5 episodes long. Now you know why when you sign up for that Army Painter Pledge, you get 200 hours worth of videos. The Dark Sword figures alone, what is there? There's 26 episodes of that. Times, 2 hours, 15 minutes on average. You get the picture. We're getting the picture here that I want to get some of that blue up here too. But I need some dark around the eyes there. Let's see what we can do for that. So that's some wildwood there. Bit of the contrast green wildwood. Really, you could use, again, if it was Reaper paints, I would say it's probably brown liner and green liner. But we're using contrast paints. So we have now a dark greenish brown. We're gonna go right here. Yeah. It was definitely needing some darks in here. Oh yeah, we just need some separation. It's also gonna make that glow in the eyes stand out a bit more. And because some of the surrounding color is more of the reddish, when you have something like a greenish brown like this, you're going to get not just a light and dark differential, but also a color differential. We also have like a hole there in his skull. Maybe we can do like a crack here or something. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to paint in more of that than what is there. But how's this? Just spider out some of these cracks in the skull. I didn't do this to any of the other ones. So this is the first time I've done that on these guys. Here, let's continue that out this way. Oh yeah, look at that. That's cool. That's very fun. And I need to get some darks right in there. I'm gonna enhance separation of his fingers here. I will maybe just get some regular darks down in some of the armor slats here. Now that's too flat there. We gotta do something with it. I'm gonna actually go this way. Or I'm gonna actually paint some of the armor as more of a rust there. Let's see. Can you see that? Yeah, I think so. The rest is a nice contrast to the greens. That was. I'm not even sure how I just stumbled on that. Well, actually, it was because I was looking at the art book. I was looking at the art of Lord of the Rings, and they had the actual not 3D, but basically a physical representation of, because it wasn't all just computer generated. They basically, I think, built some physical models of it, and oh my gosh, the thing was just, it looked like it had just been, I don't know, in a pond or whatever, just rusting and corroding for centuries. Yeah, that's much better. Let's see what we can do on the other side. I think we're going to do something similar here. Maybe not quite as orangey though. So that's more of a red. Yeah, look at that. Now let's get some more of that white in there. Or it could be the like the mint green, but let's see. I think you can see what's going to happen right there. Come on, a little more. I got to take some of the paint off the brush. Now I'm going to go, speaking of mint green, that's what I'm going to grab here. It's almost like it's a weird sort of purple. Oh, maybe that's what I should, magenta glowing, that's it. The Cypher Lords will have magenta glowing weapons. That'll be cool. So see here, on this side, so your glow, or not glow, your rust is more of an orange. But then over here, it's almost like a pink or purple. This also needs something. There's just absolutely nothing going on there. I'm going to say I want more of a rust type of a look on that side. So let's do it. Right about, boom. Yeah. That's what it needed. Let's see how much lighter we want to go with that. You see, this is when we create that framework. You know, if you're going to build a house, you're not going to start with draw. Look at that. There was nothing there. There was no edge. That's the downside, at least of these older Lord of the Rings figures. Now, the new ones were definitely going to have far more detail than this, so I won't have to paint in quite as much. But again, that's the secret weapon, and I'll show you in a second here. Just give me a couple of takes at that. So here, let's get these so you can see the labels on them there. So this is the yellow or the red rust, old rust, and there's your orange rust. And I know the labels are a little bit beat up. Now let's do something else here. I'm always throwing a few new twists and everything. Here, let's take some of our rust color. I'm going to mix it with this. This is a favorite thing that I used to do for golds, believe it or not. Is take it's like a orange or a red, mix it with this sort of a lime green. And we're going to try and find ourselves just a couple of light spots right there. And now, right there too. We're going to, maybe this is the one part of the sword handle that still has a little bit of shininess to it, like that. And now, remember here, there was just nothing going on in that whole sword blade, but yet we've got this bluishness here. We got the yellow-green. We have some orange, some red. We have all kinds of different flavors here. It's like a weathering sundae. It's like Baskin Robbins. There's 30 some odd flavors of weathering in there. But we kept the colors simple. That same green that we were using to lighten up our fluorescent paint a couple hours ago. Oh, look, we can add some highlights here now. Bring that out. This is just like we were doing with the other guy. We do a little bit of finalizing here. So I know I've mentioned this a few times, but I will be doing the new King of the Dead with his heralds. I'm just going to call them that because they're just guys with standards and stuff. If you want to be able to see those, the YouTube live of those and make sure you don't miss it, you do the subscribe thing, obviously, but then do the click notifications. I guess click all notifications. And that should do the trick for you. I know I've had to do it with all the guys that I subscribe to, and once I did, I all of a sudden then I wasn't missing stuff anymore, because I would get really frustrated going, oh man, how did I miss this? I'm subscribed. And this kept happening over and over again. So more on the skulls here. There. Let's get some of the couple of the teeth going there. But now I gotta add some of this into here too, because we can't only have bright highlights on those skulls. We need something on his armor. Now let's get some of that green in there. We've got a lot of the rust and everything else. Let's see if we can add some more of this. Maybe even in the shadow areas. I'm gonna try and get this in these 3 slats. So what I just did there, look at that. See how the green got down in between the rust and the armor slats? Or plates, as you might, whichever way. It's late. It's 3:38 here. I get to do my own words. So that is just the fun part of this stage here. I'm gonna just drink some water here real quick. Bear with me. Otherwise, the voice is just going to give way. Now, this is some of my almost kind of gold mix here. Let's find a few other places for that. That's more of a bit of a belt loop there. I'm gonna see if I can't find a few little highlights on the ends of these armor bits here. Yeah, they either have to go lighter here or go darker on the other side. We're going to try it lighter first and see what that does. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction here. We're going to take wildwood and some of our red rust here, or old rust and wildwood. And now we're going to get ourselves a bit of a, it's not really a wash at all. It's pretty, the red rust actually makes it less of a watery contrast paint. It gives a little bit of, yeah. See, all of a sudden, as we do this, we get a little more resolution in all these different sections here. Now let's see if there's anything more we want to develop here on the shield now that we've got this. Are there some dark areas that we maybe left behind on the shield? What about on the sword here? Basically some chipping on that. Oh yeah, got to go on this side here. Like so. I do want to develop a little, that's it. Let's go a little more wildwood in there. Oh, that. So now I can go into my chips again. I gotta do something here with this. It needs to be even more. Something tells me I just want more dark here. Again, that's mostly the wildwood, a little bit of the red rust still in there. And this is, like I said, these old style figures, you kind of have to give them a bit of an assist because they don't necessarily have tons of detail. Now on this, particular piece of the armor here. I'm trying to get that darker right there. And then we're going to go lighter here. There's a whole nother... Yeah, all of these sort of got lost in the shuffle early on. We're going to start messing with those again. Right in here. Yep. Look at that. Let's get a little bit of our green into that. Now, I'm going to see what happens with this lighter tone up here. It's got to go one way or the other. Yeah, okay. This is what it needed. I'm not going to say that it was just a bunch of middle tones. It really wasn't. But it's, yeah, it needed some of this. I would love to have that be, the hair almost be darker. But because of the way the sculpt is, we're limited a little bit. Now I'm taking essentially some of the rust color here. We're going to make some more. I'm just going to have to draw it in. There is no actual texture here. Doesn't exist. I got to create it. Let's go a touch brighter with that. And now on his shield, we're going to do some similar things. Let's find an edge up here. Yeah, like that. I need some green here. And I think we got, yeah, this should do the trick. And we're going to do a couple of the grains, wood grain in that green. Yeah, it needed that. We're going to solidify an edge there. Let's lighten it a bit. That's the mint green again. Now there's a rivet there that needs to be brought out a little more. Let's see if we can't do that. Like that. So you can see how we've built up our rust in some places. Now this is just, there's got to be some more. Look at that separation there. See how it's darker? It's lighter in what would technically be more like a shadow area. But what's darker is now lighter, or what would normally be darker is made lighter. We're reversing, we're changing the laws of physics. Well, maybe not. But we are creating some visual trickery. I know as a 2D painter, that's really, you're an illusionist. But as a miniature painter, you're even more of a delusionist. maybe that's what I am. But anyways, as far as the miniature painting goes, okay, yeah, the shape is there. It's already round. It's 3D. But because it's so darn tiny, to make it believable, you actually have to take that shape further. You have to force, it's almost like forced perspective, as we add some darks here, because we've got these, obviously, some holes in the garments that just aren't really showing up because we have nothing but kind of light that's worked its way in there. Maybe a few more. Just paint in some more holes. We're going to paint in some detail there that's not actually really there. We're going to get a dark in here. And there. A bit of a highlight to the edge of that. Yep. That changes. Oops, sorry, that got a little out of focus. So there's a whole bit of stuff going on over here. Now you can't necessarily see what's going on with the hair too well, but I have to do so. There's just a whole blob of nothing right there. So I'm going to take some of my, this is some of that same almost purplish red that we used on some of the armor plates, because remember, color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere, and I'm just painting in the texture there. So see that piece of, that strand of hair, that just, it doesn't exist, it's not part of the sculpt. We'll go in the other direction now. This is our wildwood here. And try and twist this so you can see what I'm about to do right in here. Okay, so we painted in strands of hair that didn't exist. And I mean, there's other miniatures too sometimes where either because of the casting or whatever, some of the parts are, well, we'll just say a bit of a mystery. Not quite sure what they actually are. Yeah, look at that. Very nifty. And for those of you that are in the, well, you're going to be in the Chicago area towards the end of October at Dragonfall convention here in the area. I will be doing basing classes there, and we'll be, obviously you can see that basing is a big part of all of my armies. I was told at one point I was not allowed to play games with only just my bases. So, okay, fine. I painted miniatures and put them on my bases. But yeah, we'll be doing stuff with the Green Stuff World texture rollers, with bark, and also with Scopy like this. This is now more of the, and again, you can see just how thick, that's the fluorescent paint. That's really thick, but it is super translucent. Just something you have to be aware of. Now we're doing that, again, the mix of the contrast warp lightning green with their fluorescent paint, and that's going to be nice and really intense, but obviously transparent too, because I want to get a little bit of that spread around a few places. I want to do some on the sword, some on him. Think of this as just a super tightly controlled glaze. I want to get some down onto my base here. I think these rocks could use a bit of it. Yeah. But this is still important here, that bit of reddishness that I got there. Oh, hey, Mandalore, how's it going? Oh, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. These are, oh boy, I can't say how much I've been looking forward to trying to finish off the rest of the Army of the Dead. Now, this is not the last of it, because I've got, oh, gee whiz, I think maybe 10 more of these that haven't even been put together yet. So there's more Army of the Dead to come. And then, well, you'll be seeing them in battle reports. Yeah, now we're doing some nifty little glazes right here. So here's this is what we've been working on. And let's show what they were initially. They looked a whole bunch like this guy here at the start. And then we did some of the contrast glazes over that. And then we've been advancing these the rest of the way, refining stuff, picking out these little armor plates on him, doing things like this with our rust on the helmet there, creating different effects. but we pretty much stuck with the same color palette all the way through. I'm going to get some of this on his face there. So this is how we can create a little more shape, but also, yeah, see, now we got some of the green on the blade there. Okay, where are we at? This again is for the most part, the Achillean green mixed with our fluorescent paint. Gonna tidy up a few things there. Maybe even just, look at it, it barely even registers as a green there. It probably just looks a little glossy to you right now. That's the paint that I just applied to it. So we've been actually, oh geez, now it's almost 4 o'clock. I think we've been at this for fairly close to 3 hours. Now I've tried to show some other things too. Now this hand, do I like, I'm going to go back to some of this pink stuff here. So I'm going to go, that's the mint green in with our old rust. Trying to get a touch of that on his hands, a little bit on the scabbard, some on the shield. And some on the cloak here. That's it. That's what I wanted to do. Now let's get some of the, darken it down a touch. Get that down into the crevice there. And then work its way out a little bit. We're going to get some of that right up into here too. Like so, yeah. And now go back to the wildwood here with the green, and we're going to get a little bit of separation. I'm even maybe going to put a few little holes there. There. Yeah, let's get some dark into that, and now just a bit more dark in this belt. And the eyes, I'm going to shade those down a little bit. This is that's the contrast paint in our fluorescent. That's better. There's a little too much glow there. Believe it or not, we had to tone it down a little. I think we had to do the same thing on the other guy. Just like the rust and everything else. Too much glow sometimes can be too much. That's better. We're toning that down. There we go. Yeah. Now it looks more like a glow instead of just a whole bunch of really bright dots. Now we'll bring back our other guys. So, we've got some decent glow on their faces now. Yeah. And we've got ourselves some nice rust and everything going on. Really nice little adventures on the back of the cloaks there. So I will going to have to sign off here. I do have to get some sleep, but I appreciate everybody watching it. And Mandalore, sorry that it's just almost like you were just on and now we're heading out. But first, last, all the Garys, Gary, poor Gary, fuse the ice, Hans, of course, and Gary Francis, and Randall, Trevor, Cameron, Wargaming Lobby, everybody. Bethany, I know you were on for a little bit there. It's I really appreciate, again, everybody hanging out. And be sure to catch me again. I'll either be doing the King of the Dead and his buddies next, or we'll be doing Eowyn next. So thanks again, everybody, and I will catch you on the next one.